Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy and vigor. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Om Shri Rama Rama Ramiti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Ramanama Varanani. We delight in the beautiful name of Shri Ram again and again. For even if we once remember the name of Shri Rama, it bestows a fruit equal to 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu. So this prayer, of course, introduces us very nicely to the continuing story of Rama. And I know this has been in bits and pieces. And because of various activities, but we're able to bring the story up again, just to remind you where we are. If you remember that Rama and Sita, now in the forest, came across the sister of Ravana, and there was something of a humorous exchange that ended in a little bit of tragedy. And Supakarna, that is the sister of Ravana, became humiliated, and she goes and complains. Not only that, but Rama's expediency of the demons in the forest has come back to Ravana's ears and so on. And he is persuaded that the best way to tackle this Rama, so powerful, yet so human, is to steal the most beautiful woman that anybody had ever seen, that one that is born from a furrow in the earth, the daughter of King Janaka, whose beauty is exquisite. And we know that her beauty comes from her purity that shines naturally through a person's face. And so this appeals to Ravana because he is, of course, under the difficulty of lust. So he wants to possess her. Of course, he possesses many, many women. So power and greed, Aishwarya, Bhoga, pleasure, and greed, these two powerful things influence all our minds. But we also have to take the story in its deeper philosophical way, because it is, after all, not just a historical account, itihasa, but it is also a philosophical account. And pure philosophy, of course, is meaningless unless it has some practical application for us. So all along throughout the story, we have to examine in detail what is the lesson for us, what is the practical lesson. We are also meandering in a forest. And not just a forest, but a forest that is unknown to us, that presents two aspects. The one aspect can be fear. The unknown is the source of fear for most of us. But the other aspect could be, if we have a philosophical attitude, sense of adventure, going into the unknown territory, facing it with the knowledge that what is presented before us is all a dispersion of divine waves. So let us have a look and see where we are. Now you'll recall that Maricha has been approached. Maricha has these magical powers, and Maricha is able to transform himself into any form that he desires. But he's come across Rama previously, and he knows that Rama's power is tremendous and is also tied up with a certain destiny. And so initially he is cautioning Ravana, but you see, burning with passion, Ravana, he flies again in his flying chariot to Maricha to try and hatch a plot. And the plot is that we'll make a scenario where Sita is on her own, and Ravana can then, in disguise, come and take her. And he's going to Maricha. The same means that he's going to go to Sita, that is on a Vimana, a flying chariot. And we always have to remember that what we are reading is itihasa. That is a historical account. And you may wonder, in the ancient days, let's say 7,000 years ago, did they have such things as a flying chariot? And we have no reason to disbelieve that, yes, indeed, there must have been some kind of low-flying aircraft that was there. It's not completely unfeasible. Is there any archaeological evidence and all that for these things? No, but archaeology has a way of surprising us many, many times. We know that, just broadly speaking, that Ravana is a sophisticated person with sophisticated kingdoms, or a kingdom that goes right up to the Dandaka forest, his area, and that they are technologically advanced enough to get about very quickly. So he's telling Maricha that to avenge myself, he says, I've decided to carry off Rama's wife from the Dandaka forest. That's where we left it. And to disgrace and punish this Rama is a duty I owe to my race. You know, all our bad behavior and our desires can all be justified in some way or another. An internal dialogue with oneself can make the most horrendous acts seem something that is for the benefit. The most obvious and most appalling example of this, probably in the last few centuries, was the last century's massacre of the Jewish people in the Holocaust. The absolute absence at all of human feelings, the capacity to deal with a fellow human being as if you were dealing with the lowest beast, and yet done under a guise of semi-Darwinism and the promotion of a pure race, the Aryan race, a complete distortion of the origin of the species or the descent by modification that Darwin had in mind, although Darwin himself hints that there is some merit in a special selection in the race. Anyway, he's justifying himself. He says he thinks that this is his duty, but of course underneath that there are these more sinister motives. And apart from that, he wants revenge. He wants revenge against Rama. So what is he saying? I want to revenge against Rama. I want to assert myself in my own territory. I want to possess a beautiful woman. And all of these things I see as a benefit, but when you analyze it, it's a benefit to himself, not to society as a whole. And so he asks for help. And he says, with you to help me, I have no fear. In courage, strength, skill, and magic powers, none on earth can equal you. That is why I have come to you. You cannot refuse me. I will tell you how you can help me. And so what he's doing is he's replacing faith in the fundamental divinity of our own nature that devout worshippers call God. And he's putting his faith in other things. Let us see what he's putting his faith in. He's putting his faith in human courage, human strength, human skill, and magic powers. And these must be emphasized that none of these have been traced back to their ultimate origin. And therein lies the difference, because all of these things we also encourage. We encourage courage. We ask people to be strong. We ask people to use their skill. Now the magic powers, of course, are powers which are derived from thought. And thought is a mobilizing force, and nothing can combat it. It will always condense as a scene in front of us. But none of this is attributed to divinity. And the evidence of that is none on earth, you see. None on earth is more skilled at all of these things than you. And he continues, that's why I have come to you. You can't refuse me. I'll tell you how you can help me. And he outlines his plot. He says, you should turn yourself into a golden deer with silver spots, casting a spell on all eyes. And in that shape, romp in front of Sita near Rama's ashram. True to the character of women, she'll insist on Rama and Lakshmana pursuing and capturing you for her. And when they are thus engaged, and she's left alone, then I shall come in, I shall easily carry her off. Now he's mentioned courage and strength, but this is a coward's remedy. This is subterfuge. This is going behind the back. This is not confronting Rama in battle. It's the very opposite of it. And so he's hatching this plot. He's also assuming that women in general will be captivated by these scenes, and he's assuming that these things will cast a spell. So all of these things he's assuming, but this is the subterfuge that he's plotting. Now he's continuing because he has heard about this and he's acknowledging Sita is a most beautiful woman. Now he's bringing out his real motives. Rama, losing such a wife, is sure to languish in sorrow and lose his manly spirit. It will then be easy to kill him and avenge ourselves. So all of this we may have covered previously. Anyway, Maricha, the effect of Ravana's speech on him is he becomes completely stunned. And he stares at Ravana, and his face becomes pale and his mouth is parched. Why is it so? Because this plan frightened him. He had some experience of Rama's prowess and his wisdom, which itself was born out of penance. So he had some wisdom and he saw exactly what was going to happen. Now he knew that Ravana's sinful purpose had not the ghost of a chance of success. And that was his other fear, because it was clear to him that the noose of fate was sitting around Ravana's neck, dragging him to inevitable ruin. And he'd spoken, no doubt, of the honor of the Rakshasas, of the duties of kingship, and of the insult to Surpanaka and so on. But he was really impelled by lustful desire. And he was impelled to possess Sita. And all of this Maricha, through his wisdom, had seen. And we also disguise our hidden desires with all kinds of excuses and all kinds of behaviors. But when we strip it down to its basic level, we find that it is all to do with passing pleasure. Now, this is the human condition, but it's not just the human condition. What we call this lustful desire is really just a sophisticated version of a basic biological drive in every organic creature, that is to make the species successful. And so we don't get our freedom if we succumb to these genetic drives. We have to transcend because we have the capacity to do it. The one thing that is missing in most of our fellow creatures is the refinement of the intellect. And it is through this intellect, purified intellect, this buddhi, as it is called, that we release, as it were, or we realize our own inherent freedom. And so we should analyze Surpanaka's motives too. You see, she had suffered because of her own uncontrollable carnal desire, exactly the same thing. And though it was Lakshmana who mutilated her, cut her nose off, which was a punishment in those days, ears and nose, she was not so angry with him as she was with Sita, because Sita was the whole cause of the thing. Sita was, in her view, that obstacle for her own pleasure. And of course, although she appeared as a beautiful woman, her real nature was not like that at all. And we can learn a lesson from that as well in human nature. So it was Sita who, in her view, stood between her and her desire, and whose beauty and virtue she hated, just as darkness hates light. Now, the one desire that now burned in her heart was to avenge herself by bringing disgrace on Sita, so it was all aimed at her. And in order to use Ravana for this purpose, she described Sita in magnificent language and how beautiful she was, realizing that this would stimulate Ravana's inherent desire. And so she describes her in glowing terms and kindled his lawless passion. And the rest of her talk was just an ancillary for her main purpose. Now, the reference to the honor of the race and the security of his empire and all these other things, the slaying of his kinsman and all of these things that Ravana came up with, they only served her main purpose, which was to rouse Ravana's lust and make him desire Sita at all costs. And he was caught in the trap. So now we have to see that maybe it's not directly Ravana's issue, Ravana's fault, but of course his response to the clues or the triggers that were presented to him. Anyway, Maricha tells Ravana, look, I've listened, my king, to all that you have said, and I'm filled with boundless sorrow. It's easy to flatter. Flattery is ever pleasing to the ears, and you've flattered me so well. You've told me about my courage and my strength and my magic powers and all the rest of it. But the people who utter these things, though unpalatable advice are few, and fewer still are those who welcome it when given, yet it's my duty also to speak to you, and I'm going to tell you a harsh truth. The sweet words might please you now, but will surely lead you to danger and ruin. And I can give you sweet words and praise you at the risk of you being angry, but I have to tell you the truth. The people who have informed you haven't really told you all the truth about Rama. And don't be deceived by what you have heard from others about this Rama. He's neither a renegade, nor is he a criminal, as people might have said, but a dutiful son who is in the forest to honor his father's word, an honorable person, and dedicated to truth. And far from being a weakling or a coward, as you might assume, he's a mighty warrior, and he's equal in arms to no one. And so my advice is, don't make him your implacable enemy, because this will bring ruin on your people and your kingdom. And from what you are bent upon, it looks as though Sita was born only to compass your ruin. And the race of the Rakshasas and Lanka itself will soon be destroyed on your account. Now, these are very risky words to say. And he continues, though, who is the enemy that has put this disastrous thought into your head? Who has given you this bad advice to take you and your kingdom and your race to danger and destruction? Who told you that he was a lover of pleasure and falsehood? Rama is the embodiment of dharma. He employs his strength and courage in the service of dharma. And as I mentioned before, dharma is a technical term with many, many ancillary meanings. For example, derived from that thing which holds things together, that binds things together, that coordinates things, that harmonizes things. Naturally, it can be interpreted as religion, law, moral codes, duty. All of these are ancillary aspects of this one binding force that creates harmony. And so Rama is dedicated to this, dedicated to holding things together in harmony, not to destroying or not to destruction, not to get things thrown apart. And we recall how Sri Krishna in his Bhagavad Gita will say that from age to age I am born. The one cosmic balancing power is born from age to age to adjust this dharma whenever adharma, the opposite of it, arises. And so he says, you see, I don't know who told you that this Rama was a dharma, but he employs his strength and courage in the service of dharma. And as Indra is surely the first among the deities, Rama is first among mortal men. You see, today very few people worship Indra. Indra was the chief of all the deities in the Vedic times. And the reason for that is because Indra was associated with human welfare, associated with rainfall and seasons, associated with weather and clouds. And naturally, that is the primary concern of man because food is the primary concern, agricultural welfare. But after some time, it was understood that's okay in the relative world. But what about beyond the relative world? And so when this was realized, Indra, the chief of the illuminating factors, is the literal meaning of devas. Now, of course, the illuminating factors in the human body are the indriyas, or the senses, and Indra is naturally their king, therefore Indra is the mind. Anyway, he continues, how dare you? How could you cast longing eyes on Sita? Will Sita ever yield to you? Take her from Rama indeed. Can one deceive the sun and steal from him his light? You can't do it. You'll fail. You'll be reduced to ashes if you approach the blazing fire of Janaka's daughter. Don't fall a prey to Rama's shafts. You'll be approached the blazing fire. The blazing fire because purity is like a blazing fire. Don't fall prey to Rama's shafts. Don't seek your own death. Don't approach the fire guarded by Rama. Do you think this has any effect on Ravana? Not at all. When somebody is possessed by passion, we don't think about any of the consequences of it to ourselves or to other people. It continues, one should not launch on a course of action without full thought. You can never vanquish Rama in battle. And then he says, ruler of the Rakshasas, don't turn a deaf ear to my words. Do you remember how in olden days, proud of my strength, he's talking about himself, I disturbed the rites and sacrifices of the sage Vishwamitra, and if you recall, he was key to this, and Vishwamitra had to second the services of Rama and Lakshmana at the age of 16. In those days, Rama was but a boy, he says. But Vishwamitra had, with Dasaratha's permission, taken young Rama to protect his sacrifice. And that sage knew Rama's prowess. I approached the place to put out the sacrificial fire with contaminating blood and flesh, and then I came up against the boy Rama. There are many people today who've been involved in terrorist acts, probably been imprisoned, and who have had a change of heart and realized. And so we find this is an ancient version of that as well. So I came, says Maricha, up against this mere boy, Rama. He was only 16. What do you think happened? Well, he let loose an arrow which killed Subahu on the spot, and with another he swept me off my feet and hurled me into the sea. Rama, the boy, he's now a man. He's immeasurably stronger and he's more skillful in arms than he was then. So I'm advising you not to incur his wrath. Don't bring ruin on your people who are enjoying wealth and pleasure. In other words, Ravana's kingdom was going well. Don't harbor thoughts about Sita and bring down destruction on your rich and beautiful city, and it will bring certain death on yourself. And if you persist in this foolish project, then I see before my eyes, Ravana, the ruin that awaits you. I see Lanka in flames. I see her streets littered with death. I see her widows and orphans loud in lamentation. And so I'm imploring you, avoid this great, great, devastating sin. And if you are angry with Rama himself, then fight him face to face and meet your death like a hero. Don't follow their fraudulent path and drag me down into it. Go back and be happy with your numerous wives, and don't invite Yam, the Lord of Death, to your land and to your race. And so in this way, Maricha is earnestly pleading for the good of Ravana, who, however, naturally, you can imagine, was far from pleased with these statements, nor was he convinced. How could good advice prevail on a victim of lust? He cannot. And so, like a sick man rejecting medicine, Ravana refuses to listen to Maricha's counsel. If a king, replies Ravana, wants to know whether things should or should not be done, it's open to his advisors to examine its advantages and its disadvantages. But I haven't come to you for advice. I haven't come for a lecture. I'm king. So you can see that all of this passion comes from one source, egoism, as it does with us. So he's puffing his chest up and he's saying, I am the king. I have come to tell you, that is, to command you, that I've decided to do this. And I expect and want your help to carry it out. And you forget the loyalty due from you. And how dare you tell me that what I contemplate is wrong? I've considered everything and reached a decision. And this insignificant creature whom you extol is just a mere man. He's unworthy of the honor of a formal challenge to battle from me. Don't forget, he has a boon that he cannot be defeated by anybody, and he doesn't consider man to be significant. So the boon doesn't include a mere mortal. And what more is he than a man driven out of his own country? You can extol him as you like, but he's just a refugee. He's a fool who has allowed himself to be cheated by a woman and has been deprived of his rights. And so the proper treatment of such a fellow is, I'm going to disgrace him by carrying off his wife. That was his mindset. And this is a matter determined and concluded. That's it. I've made my decision. Your remarks are irrelevant. You should do what I want you to do. And that isn't much. It's just to use your powers and transform yourself into a strange and beautiful stag and appear before Sita and attract her attention. That's all I want you to do. I'm not asking you to carry her off. I'm not asking you to make a combat. I'm not asking a lot of you, but I am commanding him, not even requesting you. And Sita and play this part as a stag, dance before Sita and attract her attention. And Sita will send Rama to pursue and capture you. And you should draw Rama away to a distance. And once you've done that, you should simulate Rama's voice. And you should cry, ah, Sita, ah, Lakshmana. And when Sita hears this, she'll conclude that Rama is in danger. She'll force Lakshmana to go to his help. And when she is alone, I shall carry off to Lanka. And once you've rendered me this help, then you'll have your freedom. You'll be at liberty to do what you like. I won't enslave you. I won't ask anything more of you. But if you won't help me, now understand your life shall be forfeit. So there's your alternative. Anyway, Maricha thought within himself, you see, the frenzied Ravana, who's already under the shadow of doom, he won't listen to advice. His desire is sinful and it's driving him into the jaws of death. It's better for me to be killed. Now I have alternatives. I can be killed by Rama or killed by Ravana. These are my choices. And of the two, I'd rather be killed by Rama. At least then I would yield my life to a foe. And so he agreed to the proposal. Yes, I'll do it, knowing his faith. And this brings out A wonderful characteristic. We find it's there in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana as well, that there are various characters who may have been of demonic nature and whose lives have changed and turned. Anyway, he agrees to the proposal and he says, I have given you good advice. He still says, but you won't listen. So if I carry out your wishes, I'm sure to die. You haven't mentioned that part. But not more sure than that you will also perish. These are very risky words, but Ravana needs him. So you'll perish, and you'll perish not long after with all that is yours, and your race will go as well. And some enemy of ours wishing our destruction has set you on this course. Someone who envies you. I'd rather be killed by a foe, an enemy, whom I respect, than by you. So come, let us go to Dandaka. And Ravana puts aside all this advice, or what he doesn't consider to be sound advice. And he's also doesn't seem to have any compassion whatsoever for Maricha. He's completely ruthless. And so Ravana becomes overjoyed and embraces Maricha now, saying, now you are again my dear old Maricha. Now if he had disagreed with him and refused, he wouldn't be like that. And so the two ascended the chariot. That is this Vimana, this flying chariot, possibly a low-lying aircraft, like a helicopter, probably something of that nature, and proceeded toward this Dandaka forest. They flew over the cities, mountains, rivers, and kingdoms, and it tells you of the vastness of the land. And reaching Dandaka, they found Rama's ashram, and they found it in a garden that was abundant with bananas, plantains. They alight at a distance, and Ravana tells Maricha, it takes him by the hand and points to the ashram and tells him to do his part according to their plan. And so instantaneously, Maricha transforms himself into this wonderful deer. And every part of the animal had its own different hue and exquisite beauty, and this is beautifully described by Valmiki. So like a rainbow in the sky, it charmed the eye of the beholder. Gold, silver, diamonds, gems, flowers seemed to appear in succession on its beautiful skin. It was like a living stream of jewels flowing on a beautiful golden body, not just an ordinary creature, but something that was instantaneously dazzling. Something that was not seen in the forest. With such surpassing beauty, the magic deer wanders here and there, now resting for a while and now pursuing its graceful gambols. And it would sometimes bend and nibble the grass on the ground, so beautifully was it simulated, and again lift its head up to eat the tender leaves of plants. And sometimes it would walk slowly near the ashram, and sometimes again it would jump away and disappear and reappear at a distance. Is this not how our life is? Is this not how we can describe the world of Maya, how attractive, how enticing it is? And sometimes it would join a herd of deer, and then it would part from it and walk alone. And the other deer would smell him and move away in sudden terror, because nature knows the foreigner. Anyway, Sita, she was gathering flowers in the forest. And she looked at the stag and stared spellbound at its wondrous beauty. And the deer too stared back at her and ran here and there in front of her, displaying its arts and shedding a new beauty on the landscape. Do come and look, do come and look. That's what Sita cries out. And she's eager that Rama and Lakshmana too should see this wonderful stag in front. And come quickly, quickly, she says. And Rama and Lakshmana came out of the cottage and saw the exquisite creature, and they also marveled at its beauty. But Lakshmana was a bit more wily, and he grew a little suspicious. After all, nobody had ever seen such a creature in the forest. It seemed to him that it was no ordinary deer, but a Rakshasa in disguise. He immediately had the instinct about it. But both Rama and Lakshmana had heard about Maricha and had been told how, assuming the form of a deer, he would often beguile and destroy people who came for hunting deer in the forest. And Lakshmana then says, I don't think this is an ordinary animal. And I think this is a trick of the Rakshasa. But Sita says, do catch this deer for me. We shall bring it up as a pet in the ashram. This is the delusion of Maya, even amongst the noblest. This is the most beautiful creature I have seen so far in this forest. Look, do look at it. What color, what playfulness. And so she went on, talking of the deer and desiring to possess it. And she pleads, please do somehow catch it for me. And she begs Rama, oh Rama, soon we shall have to return to the city. Shouldn't we take some rare thing from the forest to Ayodhya? This is exactly the thing. How beautiful it'll be. Such an exquisite creature moving in the inner apartments of our palace. And Bharata would be so pleased. I should love to give it to him. So it's not just that she wants to possess it for herself. She's thinking of the whole of the kingdom, and she's thinking of her brother-in-law. Do my beloved catch it for me, she says. Somehow catch it for me. And Sita saw that Lakshmana didn't seem to like her importunity, and so this only made her more determined to persuade Rama to get it for her. Now, if a strong desire creeps into our heart and someone stands in the way of it, we become angry. This is the consequence. We become angry with him no matter how dear he may be to us. And so this is an unfortunate truth about the way that desire works. It works like this in the human mind, and it's explained clearly by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita. And it was here demonstrated by what happened in Sita's heart now. Look, she exclaimed, it is all gold. Look now, it's all silver. If you can't capture the creature alive, at least bring it down with an arrow and let us take the skin home. We shall never again see such a beautiful skin. It would be a lovely thing to sit on. Look, it's going away. Do go and catch it alive if you can, or else let me at least have the skin. And again she said, look again, all those long years, I never saw such a beautiful thing. I never saw anything in any of these forests. It's like a cluster of shining stars, sparkling things. And Rama couldn't resist anymore. He succumbed to her entreaties, as no doubt beloveds do. And he says to himself, look, even if Lakshmana is right and the creature is a Rakshasa, so much the better reason for killing it. So there's nothing to be afraid of. If I can't catch it alive, I can bring it down with an arrow and give the skin to Sita. This is his reasoning. And when she is so keen on having it, isn't it my duty as her husband to get it for her? And so he tells Lakshmana to bring him his bow and arrows, and Lakshmana's heart wasn't really in it, but he obeys. And Rama sets out saying, mind Lakshmana, remain by Sita's side, guard her vigilantly. I shall come back soon with this stag alive or dead. Don't be anxious, even if this is a Rakshasa. What does it matter? It will share the fate of Vatapi. Vatapi, if this has come here to cheat me, as Vatapi tried to cheat Agastya, why then it will be the victim of its own deceit. What can this animal do to me? A stag or Rakshasa, it's all the same. Again he said, please be careful, mind Sita. This is his great concern, because anything might happen at any time. Be vigilant. Now, destiny has now set the stage for misfortune. And strangely enough, Lakshmana, who was by nature quite hasty, quick to act, was on this occasion suspicious, and Rama was usually circumspect, but he now yielded to Sita's foolish wish. And disregarding Lakshmana's warning, he goes in pursuit of Maricha the stag. And just to give Ravana plenty of time and opportunity, Maricha keeps within sight of Rama, but beyond his reach, and draws him on and on like fate itself. And the deer would take a few steps and then stop and turn and stare at the pursuer, and then suddenly it would start, as if in fear, pricking its ears. It would spring, drawing up its hooves to its breast, and it would disappear for a while among the trees, emerging soon on some small or tall mound. It would display its lovely outline, framed against a passing cloud. And sometimes it allowed near approach as though tired, and sometimes it would present itself as easy of capture. But presently it would spring up and then bound far away. And all of this went on until Maricha took Rama far out. And then the Rakshasa realized this game would not go on forever, that his end was near. And Rama, tired of the pursuit, bent his bow and sent forth his arrow, and it pierced the stag. Maricha resumed his natural form, no longer a stag, and simulating Rama's voice as was planned, he called out, "Ah, Sita, ah, Lakshmana," and he cries it out with such a piercing, agonizing cry, and then he falls dead. And Lakshmana was right, Rama said to himself. This deer was indeed a Rakshasa. But then now he thought further, and hearing his last cry, maybe Sita will be deceived. She is likely to be overwhelmed by fear. And so he says to himself again, what if Sita entertains false fears and Lakshmana is there by her side? And then, because he sees all this plot unfolding, and his heart swells with pride and joy that he had a brother like Lakshmana to protect Sita, so loving, so steadfast, so loyal. How could Rama guess what was going to happen at this very, very instant in the ashrama? And what painful words Lakshmana had to hear from Sita. Truly, the way of destiny is cruel and not easy. Alas, alas, O Sita, Lakshmana, so cries Maricha, simulating Rama's voice again and again, and Sita was indeed deceived. Trembling like a plantain tree in a storm, she cried, "There, Lakshmana, don't you hear your brother's agonizing voice? He must be in trouble. Run, run at once. Go to his aid, help him." Overwhelmed by fear and seeing Lakshmana unwilling to move now, because his instruction was, stay and protect Sita, she appeals to Lakshmana again and again in an agony of anxiety, because she feels that Rama is in danger and has been wounded. "I hear my Lord's voice in distress. Go at once. Don't delay." And she begs him and she cries. "And he's in some great danger. Can't you hear? Didn't you hear his cry for help? Why do you still stand here? Your brother is undoubtedly surrounded by many Rakshasas, and he's crying for help. Instead of rushing to his rescue, you're just standing here." Well, now Lakshmana knew the wiles of the Rakshasas, and he remembered his brother's command to stay and look after Sita, and he doesn't move. And of course, Sita is growing furious and anxious. And so in her agony and fear and doubt, she beat her breast with both hands and shouts in uncontrollable fury, "Son of Sumitra,
Have you turned as an enemy? Have you been an impostor all these years? Have you been with us waiting only for Rama to die, pretending to be his friend? Were you hoping all the time for his death to secure me there after this and take me? Why else do you stand here, wicked wretch, and refuse to go to his rescue when he cries for help? Traitor, impostor! What wounds Lakshmana is now receiving. These very cruel words now pierce Lakshmana's heart like poisoned arrows. And he closes his ears with his hands, and he speaks gently to Sita, who was in tears of wrath. Videhi, Rama can encounter and vanquish any foe in the world. There's no need to fear. Oh, more than mother. Calm yourself. You see, none in the universe is strong enough to touch our Rama or do him harm. Don't you understand that? What you've uttered is unworthy of you, my mother. Don't fear or grieve. You will surely see Rama return with the body of the stag you wanted. And he reminds her that in their sojourn on the path, his eyes were always cast down at her feet and never her face. He says the voice we heard wasn't his. It's a Rakshasa trick. Don't be deceived and grieve for nothing. My brother has posted me here to watch over you and look after you and protect you. Don't ask me to leave you alone and go. I can't disobey my brother. And since we slew the Rakshasas of Janasthana, their people are trying to avenge themselves in various ways. We shouldn't be misled by their false forms and voices. In other words, we should not be deceived by Maya. It was not Rama's cry for help. You needn't be afraid in the least. But Sita's fear grew to a frenzy now, naturally, and with eyes red with anger, she uttered terrible, terrible words. Taking advantage of what you call your brother's command, you stand unmoved by his cry of anguish and are prepared to let him perish. How completely have you been deceiving us, Rama and me, all these years? Base, wicked, selfish wretch, calling yourself brother. What terrible words she's hurling. Oh, you false friend, do rejoice that Rama is in dire peril. You see, when fear and anguish take us over, we lose our reasoning. I now see why you followed us into the forest. Have you been set on by Bharata? Have you all become my Lord's enemies? Have you all joined together in a wicked conspiracy? And this is what Patanjali calls verbal delusion. That is, projecting your imagination through fear. Have you all joined together in a wicked conspiracy? I who have lived with Rama, shall I ever look at you or another? When Rama dies, I die with him. Know this for certain. And Sita burst into a rage which completely overwhelmed Lakshmana. It was uncharacteristic of her. And her cruel words pierced and burnt into him like poisoned arrows. And his hair stood on end, and he clasped his hands in worship and said, "O mother, O goddess, how can such words issue from your mouth? Like red-hot iron, they burn my ears. They're cruel, they're unjust. These thoughts of yours, and with all the gods for my witness, I swear your suspicion is wrong. I see now that after all you are a woman like other women, quick to think evil of others. I fear a great tragedy is about to befall you. Otherwise, you couldn't have thought and spoken evil of me." And innocent Lakshmana, he trembles in fear of some dire calamity that was about to pass over them. But Sita said, "Look here is plenty of dry fuel. I shall light a fire and fall into it. Or I shall drown myself in the Godavari. Or I shall hang myself dead unless you run immediately to help Rama. Now once again I ask, will you not go, or shall I perish?" And she beat her breast and cried. Lakshmana could bear this no longer. And so he raises his hands in solemn worship and says, "Very well, sister, I shall obey you and disobey my brother. I shall leave you alone, May you be safe and well. May the gods of the forest protect you. I shall do your bidding. I see bad omens, though. I fear, I greatly fear. I wonder if I shall ever see you with Rama again. Yet I shall go. And he goes unwillingly. And looking back every now and then, Lakshmana walks, his heart troubled and heavy with anger and sorrow. And how could he bear to bear the cruel words of Sita? How could he forget them? And sorely wounded, his heart heavy, the Prince Lakshmana, who had renounced everything to be with his brother, he goes off. And Lakshmana goes in the direction that Rama has taken. And Ravana was there waiting for that moment. And he now approaches Rama's ashram. And he transforms himself into a mendicant ascetic, clad in clean saffron clothes, and his lips uttered beautiful Vedic hymns, while in his heart was ugliest evil. This part of the story is extremely telling. Not only was there a cunning plot, but see how he disguised himself as a holy person. And I'm sure there are many people in those days and today who have the same kind of disguises. We can see many of the great disturbances to people's faiths by people that we had faith in, people that we trusted in various religions and so on, who are being brought to account. And so, hidden by the appearance of goodness and good intentions, we find the most dire evil plots being hatched. And Sita was standing at the entrance of the cottage, her eyes fixed on the forest, eagerly looking for Rama. Don't forget, it is her love for Rama. And Ravana beholds Sita. And the sight of her, at the sight of her, that desire that was sown and planted in his heart by Surpanaka took good root. And he grew, and the seed of lust grows rapidly into irresistibility. He now is more determined than ever to possess Sita. And seeing this wandering ascetic, also clad in saffron robes, carrying his water pot and staff, Sita greets him respectfully, according to the courtesy due to holy people. And he desired hospitality, as was the custom, and as in duty bound, she offers him a seat and places before him some fruits and roots, as also was the custom. Now the ascetic sits and looks again at Sita, and his desire grows stronger. Sinner and Rakshasa though he was, he had an instinct that made him wish to win her heart. Not just to capture her, but also just to woo her, thinking that he will persuade her. And he wishes not to ravish, but to secure Sita's willing consent and make her his wife. And so he's now playing on his role to help persuade her in this. The king of Lanka, he wanted and hoped to persuade Sita, and he thinks she will yield to him for his wealth and for his power, turning her back on poverty-stricken Rama. And so he thinks also that this would be the best way of disgracing and punishing Rama. And he expects Sita to behave like other women that he had known. And so, seated in front of the fruits and roots offered by Sita, the ascetic now begins to praise Sita's beauty in terms too warm for a genuine ascetic. And he dwells on the charms of her person and asks, "Who are you? Why are you here alone in the forest, haunted by rakshasas and wild beasts?" And she was astonished about his approach, but answers his questions. And she hopes the prince will return at once and she keeps her eyes fixed on the doorway. But little by little, the visitor reveals now who he is, because you cannot help it, and describes the greatness of his origin and family. He starts boasting, thinking that that will impress her. He tells her about his power and his wealth, and after exalting himself, inflating his own ego, that is, he proceeds to run down Rama and concludes, "Be my wife and live a glorious life with me in Lanka. Come, let us go." It's an age-old scandal, an age-old ruse. Yeah, I'm much better. Forget about this fellow. Come with me, I'm much better. Thinking that Sita will fall for the same vices that the king is known for. And in this unexpected situation, Sita's purity now gives her courage. She restores her courage to defy the powerful monster whom she now knows for what he is. And she states it, "Base and wicked fellow, you see, your destruction is near. It is inevitable. Leave this ashram if you want to escape with your life." And she says this, hissing like an angry cobra. And the Rakshasa becomes furious. His anger now comes, because thwarted desire produces anger in all of us. And he completely throws off all pretense of disguise and gentleness and assumes his real imperious wickedness finally. And with one hand, he catches hold of her hair, with the other lifts her up and carries her to the chariot by force. And the chariot was there waiting for him behind the trees, and he forces her into it, pushes her into it, and then rose with her into the air. And Sita, in desperation, cries aloud, "Oh my Lord, where are you, my Rama? Oh Lakshmana, most faithful of friends, why did I with obstinate folly drive you away?" The Rakshasa is holding her firmly down and drives on in the aerial car. And Sita addresses the trees, the plants, anything, the whole of nature down below, and begs them to tell Rama, "Please tell Rama of my fate." And it happens that old Jatayu, half asleep upon a tree, sees the chariot flying past, and startled by a woman's cry of distress, he becomes wide awake in a moment and recognizes Sita by her voice. And she also sees him and appeals to him for her rescue. And Jatayu's blood was fired by the sight of her piteous plight. And he throws himself in the way of the aerial car, crying, "Hold, hold, what is all this? And the king of Lanka is carrying me away by force," wails Sita. "But what can you do to prevent it, my poor old friend? Fly to Rama and Lakshmana, tell them about my helpless plight." But Jatayu's fighting blood, the blood of generations of lordly ancestors who ruled the air and didn't know any fear, it was on fire now. And he didn't care for Ravana and his might, and he only saw a princess in distress. And he thinks of his friend Dasaratha and his promise to Rama, and he was resolved that this outrage should not occur, at least not while he lived to prevent it. And Jatayu now addresses Ravana directly, "O king, I am Jatayu, king of the eagles, a king like you. So listen to me as a brother king, king to king. Please forget this wicked act. How can you call yourself a king and do this shameful deed, this shameful wrong? Isn't it the rule of kings to protect and honor women? And Sita is not just a woman, she's a princess, and I warn you, you shall surely perish unless you leave her and let her go. Her very look will reduce you to ashes if she wants. You are carrying a venomous cobra in your own bosom. The noose of Yama, the Lord of Death, is round your neck. and dragging you to perdition. And we continue this dialogue the next time we meet and see what happens to the brave and loyal Jatayu. So we leave this off for today now. And I hope we learned some important lessons from this ancient story of Rama. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thank you.
Oh yes, I'll stay for a question. I see there was a question in text.
Question, yes. So why was it carved, Vamanas and the other deities? Why was it carved in the temples? Why was it? Yeah, indeed. Why was it carved in the temple for reminding humanities about these deities?
You see the story. The story is put out by Valmiki as a historical account, but it is also dramatized. It is also put, Tulsidas gives his version of it as well. So it is done in poetry, it is done in song, it is done in drama, it is done in every single artistic media you can think of, because of first of all, the whole events, some 7,000, estimated 7,000 years ago, must have been impressive on people's minds for generations to come. And the sacredness of the story, the realized value of the story. What is the value? The value of essentially strength and goodness over lust and desire and evil, and the impact it has on society at large for generations to come, and the fact that it must have been an impressive, destructive battle stands out in the memory, as does events, let's say, of the 20th century, or let us say even today, the Ukraine-Russia conflict will stand out in people's memories, probably for generations to come. And so this is now put into artistic form. It is put into carvings. It is put into temples. Why temples? Because Rama is a deity. And all the events around him become reminders of a sacred journey that we're all on, by the way, and the intervention impact of the cosmic mind coming in this case as Rama, in other cases as Krishna, and according to the theology, perhaps as Buddha and Jesus, Ram, Krishna, and so on, and other incarnations to come. So this is why these events are put into stone carvings, along with many other stories, there's no doubt. Now, my own great philosophy teacher and the one who gave me sannyas diksha, his whole life got transformed when he was very small, because the temple he went to had many pictures, not carvings, but pictures, paintings of the various episodes of Rama and Sita. This is not the only culture that does it. In Ireland, for example, and many other places in Europe, there are great cathedrals, and in Ireland's case, Celtic crosses. And these Celtic crosses will contain biblical scenes, because people of those days never had any education in reading and writing. And so the only thing they could have is something visually presented. And that was the only way the ancient people knew about the biblical stories. Now let's elevate it to the highest art that you can think of. The Sistine Chapel, it took Michelangelo many years with many obstacles. Firstly, this old chapel, he had to remove all the plaster from the ceilings and walls. And then he had to replaster it. He had to put a special scaffolding by putting bolts into the wall and planks. And he had to make sure that dust wasn't going to fall. So many obstacles he put. And then he started painting. And then when the whole thing was finished after I don't know how many years, and he'd never done it before, by the way, and the most glorious scenes were there, portraying biblical scenes. And when it was uncovered, it was just a breathtaking moment. So all throughout history, every religion has used artistic imagination or art and culture to stimulate people's imagination and devotion. This is why we have such things as carvings. Is kind of short answer to your question. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, Swami, it does. It does.
The idea of temples, you see, is that the temple is called a mandir. That is, it's derived from the same root as mind, manasa. It's designed to draw you in on a kind of pilgrim's journey, which is an echo of your own individual spiritual journey, going from the outer body of something, be it the cosmos or a building, or be it your own earth temple called the body, and going in progressively to more and more subtle and expansive areas until we find in the cave of the heart, what in temples are called the garbha, the womb. There we find the glory of the self or God. So we need these scenes. We need all the help we can get to draw our minds inwards. And this is the whole purpose of the very story of Rama, is to teach us moral lessons, but also to draw us inwards to the source of our own being and see how we can transcend the relative world and see how by engendering and cultivating purity and love and all the virtues that we have, how these become a self-revealing moment. In other words, the mind becomes so clarified that the truth is revealed from within by itself. That's the idea of all of these things. All right, so we'll finish off with those few words. Thank you.